Boyer is important because the Turning Point shell companies that Tyler Boyer managed just happened to be the same shell companies paying 110 LLC. Let me show you how Tyler Boyer describes the first time that he met Charlie Kirk.
When Charlie Kirk was assassinated in September 2025, the conservative movement didn't just lose a leader, it lost its entire blueprint. But before the dust had even settled at the funeral, a new shockwave hit the nation. Erika Kirk was named the CEO of Turning Point USA. At the time, the board told us it was the natural choice. They told us Charlie had prepared for this. They told us she was the only one who could carry the torch. But today, that official story is crumbling. New information emerging from inside TPUSA.
And I walked away from that and going, I can hitch my wagon to this guy. I can hitch my wagon to Charlie Kirk. He was my best friend. We went everywhere together.
He says that he was going to hitch his wagon to Charlie Kirk. He said that he was Charlie Kirk's best friend. We're going to see how good a friend he was. And does anyone know what this hand signal is? This is very strange.
Suggests that Erika's sudden rise to the throne wasn't just a backup plan. It was a calculated, high-stakes gamble that has left insiders stunned and donors furious. Why did Charlie Kirk, a man who meticulously managed every single dollar and every political strategy, hand the keys to an empire worth over $80 million to a spouse with zero executive political experience? Was it an act of desperate love from a man who knew his time was running out? Or was there a darker, secret motive hidden in his final directives? A dead man's switch, designed to keep his enemies away from his legacy? With the recent explosion of X-rated leaks, the assassination tent disaster, and the whistleblower allegations of fake Christians running the show, the question isn't just, why her? It's, did Charlie make a fatal mistake? Buckle up. We are about to break down the real story behind the most controversial promotion in MAGA history, and the secret motive that changes everything. On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University. The event didn't just shatter a family, it decapitated a movement. For over a decade, Charlie was Turning Point USA. He was the face, the voice, the fundraiser, and the brain. He was the only person who could walk into a room with billionaire donors and walk out with a seven-figure check. The organization was generating over $85 million a year in revenue. It was a massive machine with nearly 500 employees, private jets, and a campus presence in all 50 states. And in the blink of an eye, the engine of that machine was gone. Now, in a normal multi-million-dollar corporation, if the CEO dies, there is an interim period. The COO steps up. A search committee is formed. It takes months, sometimes a year, to find a permanent replacement. Stability is the goal. But at Turning Point USA, they didn't take months. They didn't even take 2 weeks. Just 8 days after the assassination, before the memorial service had even been held, and while the police investigation was still front-page news, the board of directors made an announcement that stunned the political world. They didn't hire a seasoned political operative. They didn't hire a former governor or a high-ranking general. They voted unanimously to install Charlie's 36-year-old widow, Erika Kirk, as the CEO and chairwoman of the board. On the surface, the press release was beautiful. It claimed that this was what Charlie wanted. The board stated that Charlie had communicated to multiple executives that Erika should succeed him to ensure the continuity of his vision. It painted a picture of a seamless transition, a passing of the torch from husband to wife, like a royal bloodline. But insiders tell a very different story, a story of absolute sheer panic behind the closed doors of their Phoenix headquarters. According to sources close to the executive team, the 48 hours following Charlie's death were chaotic. The money men, the massive donors who keep the lights on, were allegedly calling in a panic. They weren't just sad, they were worried about their investments. They wanted to know if the organization was going to fold. Without Charlie's magnetic personality, without his ability to debate leftists and go viral, What was TPUSA? The board realized they had a massive problem. If they hired a standard suit, like COO Tyler Boyer or a donor favorite, the magic was gone. It becomes just another super PAC. They needed something emotional. They needed a figurehead that was cancel-proof. Enter Erika Kirk. By installing the grieving widow, the board pulled off a brilliant, cynical maneuver. Think about it. Who can attack a mother of two who just lost her husband to political violence? No one. If the media investigated her, they would look like monsters. If internal rivals like Candace Owens tried to make a play for the throne, they would look heartless. Erika was the ultimate shield. She bought the organization time. She froze the donors in place because you can't stop writing checks to a grieving widow without looking like a jerk. But here is where the cracks start to show. Was she actually qualified for the job? Let's look at the resume. Before becoming the CEO of one of the most powerful political organizations in the Western world, Erika's background was distinct. She was a former Miss Arizona. She was a real estate agent with the Corcoran Group in New York. And she ran a clothing brand called Proclaim Streetwear, which sold faith-based hoodies and lifestyle products. Now, there is nothing wrong with any of those jobs. But there is a massive leap between selling Jesus Loves You sweatshirts on Instagram and managing an $85 million operational budget, navigating FEC regulations, and leading a culture war against the radical left. This was a person who, just weeks before, was posting about her skincare routine and divine timing on her podcast. She had no history of executive leadership in a major nonprofit. She had never run a political campaign. She wasn't a debater. So why the rush? Why not make her an honorary chairwoman and hire a real CEO to run the business? The rush was about control. Sources suggest that there was a fear of a hostile takeover. There are sharks in the MAGA movement, influencers with millions of followers who would have loved to absorb TPUSA's massive email list and donor network. If the board had hesitated, if they had shown weakness for even a month, someone else could have stepped into the vacuum. By putting Erika in charge, they kept it in the family. Literally. But this decision forced them to construct a lie. They had to sell the idea that Erika was a co-founder in spirit, that she was always behind the scenes pulling the strings. They rewrote history overnight. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from Charlie is the genius to Charlie and Erika were a partnership. We saw this at the funeral. Erika's speech was powerful, yes. She said, "The cries of this widow will echo around the world." It was cinematic. It was perfect for TV. But looking back now, with the knowledge of these recent leaks, it feels rehearsed. Staffers inside TPUSA were reportedly baffled. They knew Erika. They knew she rarely came to the office. They knew her involvement was mostly limited to the social events and the galas, the fun stuff. Suddenly, they were being told she was the boss. One lower-level employee, who posted anonymously on Glassdoor just days after the announcement, wrote, "We are in shock. We are grieving Charlie, and they just put a fashion influencer in charge of the war room. It feels like a joke." That post was deleted 24 hours later. The board took a massive gamble. They bet that Erika's image, the beautiful, stoic Christian widow, would be enough to sustain the movement. They bet that the Charlie Kirk brand was strong enough to run on autopilot with his wife as the hood ornament. For the first few months, it seemed to work. Donations poured in out of sympathy. The Legacy Fund raised millions. But they forgot one crucial thing. You can appoint a title, but you cannot appoint respect. And you certainly cannot appoint authority. Erika didn't earn the loyalty of the 500 employees who worshipped Charlie. She inherited it. And inherited loyalty is fragile. It breaks the moment you show weakness. And that brings us to the motive. Because while the board was panicking about money, Charlie Kirk, before he died, may have had a completely different reason for wanting Erika to take over. A reason that had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with a secret he was keeping from the world. Was he trying to protect her? Or was he trying to trap her? Now, we have to go deeper than just the board's panic. We have to look at the man himself. Charlie Kirk was a lot of things, but reckless wasn't one of them. He was a strategist who played the long game. And there is a very strong theory emerging from his inner circle that placing Erika in this position wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move to solve the one problem he couldn't fix himself. For years, Charlie knew that Turning Point USA had hit a ceiling. He had the college students, he had the angry young men, and he had the America First hardliners locked down. But there was one demographic that always slipped through his fingers: suburban women. He knew that to truly win the culture war, he needed to soften the edges. He needed to make conservatism look less like a shouting match and more like a lifestyle. This is where Erika was supposed to be the secret weapon. Insiders believe Charlie's true motive was to pivot the entire organization. He didn't want Erika to be another debater in a suit. He wanted her to be the conservative influencer-in-chief. He saw the power of the Kardashians, the power of lifestyle vloggers, and he wanted to harness that for the movement. The plan was to use Erika to turn Turning Point into a brand that could sell not just politics, but aspirational living, faith, family, fashion, and values, all wrapped in a softer, more palatable package. We actually saw the first signs of this shift at the recent America Fest. It was subtle, but it was there. The programming changed. Instead of just endless panels on the Constitution and border security, suddenly there were sessions on biblical womanhood and divine timing. While Charlie used to sit at tables debating liberals until he was blue in the face, Erika was seen hosting segments that felt more like a daytime talk show than a political rally. If you look closely at the data, it arguably started to work. Female attendance was up. The aesthetic was cleaner. The vibe was different. Charlie likely believed that by handing the keys to Erika, he was future-proofing the movement. He thought he was expanding the tent. But there is a massive difference between a vision and reality. And this is where Charlie's master plan began to fall apart. He underestimated one fatal flaw. You cannot run a war machine with an influencer mindset. Charlie built TPUSA to be a tank, rugged, aggressive, and ready for combat. By putting an influencer in the driver's seat, the organization started making mistakes that Charlie never would have allowed. Take the absolute disaster of the assassination tent controversy. This is the smoking gun of the leadership failure. A political operator knows that building a replica of the site where your husband was murdered is morbid and grotesque. It looks like exploitation. But to an influencer, to someone whose world revolves around content and clicks, it probably seemed like a great photo opportunity. This disconnect is what is tearing the organization apart from the inside. The hardcore political staff, the people who sleep in their offices during election season, are reportedly furious. They feel like they are working for a lifestyle blog now, not a political army. They are watching their leader prioritize aesthetics over strategy, and it's driving them out the door. But there is an even darker theory about Charlie's motive, one that is far more personal and far more tragic. It's called the dead man's switch. Charlie wasn't naive. He knew he had enemies, not just on the left, but inside his own movement. He knew that the moment he was gone, the wolves would come circling. Figures like Candace Owens, ambitious donors, and rival organizations were all waiting for a moment of weakness to carve up his empire. If he had left the organization to a board member or a COO, they could be bought. They could be pressured. They could be fired. But a wife? A widow? That is a blood bond. Some believe Charlie installed Erika not because he thought she was the best CEO, but because he thought she was the only person on Earth who wouldn't sell him out. He viewed it as a monarchy. He wanted to keep the control, the money, and the data within his own bloodline. It was a defensive move to ensure that no matter what happened, a Kirk would always sign the checks. It was a strategy born out of trust. He trusted her to protect his legacy. He trusted her to guard the castle. But that trust relies on one assumption, that she was loyal to him. And this is where the tragedy becomes unbearable. Because as we now look at the leaks, the timestamps, and the alleged betrayals that were happening while Charlie was still alive, it looks like his trust was misplaced. The dead man's switch failed. He handed the keys to the castle to someone who may have already been letting the enemy in the back door. He wanted to save the movement by keeping it in the family. Instead, by choosing Erika, he may have planted the very bomb that is now blowing it up. He thought he was creating a dynasty, but he might have just written a tragedy. And now, the question isn't about strategy anymore. It's about survival. Because if the person you trusted to guard your legacy is the one dismantling it piece by piece, then the movement isn't just leaderless, it's compromised. This brings us to the present moment, where the secret motive and the sympathy shield have both shattered, leaving behind a reality that is uglier than anyone could have imagined. If Charlie's goal was to secure his legacy, the result has been the exact opposite. We are now witnessing the systematic dismantling of everything he built, not by the radical left, but by the very leadership he left behind. The most damning blow isn't just the incompetence, it's the hypocrisy. This organization was founded on a bedrock of Christian values. It was built on the idea that culture flows from morality. But the whistleblower leaks we are seeing now describe an organization that has been hollowed out. When you have allegations of fake Christians and deep state actors pulling the strings, you aren't just losing donors. You are losing your soul. You cannot stand on a stage and lecture college students about biblical virtue and traditional marriage when the CEO is embroiled in a scandal that involves X-rated leaks and allegations of a double life. The cognitive dissonance is deafening. The brand of Turning Point USA was always about courage and truth. Right now, under Erika's watch, the brand is becoming synonymous with scandal and deception. And the wolves are not just at the door, they are inside the house. Candace Owens, who was once a pillar of this movement, has effectively declared war on the current leadership. For months, she was dismissed as bitter or jealous. But as these leaks drop, she is looking more and more like a prophet. Her warnings that the organization had lost its way, that it had become a God-forsaken company, are now being played on loop by former supporters who feel betrayed. When you have the most prominent voices in conservatism telling donors to close their checkbooks, the end is near. This is the betrayal of the vision in its purest form. Charlie Kirk spent a decade trying to prove that conservatives could be cool, smart, and principled. Erika's tenure has inadvertently reinforced every negative stereotype the left has about the right. That it's all a grift, that the family values are just a performance, and that behind the curtain, it's all rot. The tragedy here is profound. If the timeline betrayal is true, if Erika was indeed living a double life while Charlie was fighting for this country, then Charlie died defending a home that was already broken. He died thinking he had a partner in the foxhole, when in reality, he may have been alone the entire time. Donors are already demanding refunds. Chapters are disaffiliating. The sympathy card has expired. You can only play the grieving widow for so long before people start asking where the money is going and why the mission has drifted so far off course. Turning Point USA is now a ship without a rudder, drifting toward an iceberg. The board of directors is facing a choice that will define history. Do they admit they made a mistake, fire the widow of the founder, and try to salvage the wreckage? Or do they double down, protect the family name, and watch the entire organization burn to the ground? Charlie Kirk built a machine to save America. It is a cruel irony that the person he handed it to might be the one who destroys it. The experiment of the influencer CEO has failed. The dead man's switch didn't save the legacy, it detonated it. And as the dust settles, the only thing left of Charlie's vision might be the cautionary tale of what happens when you trust the wrong person with your life's work. Ultimately, the tragedy of this entire saga isn't just that the movement lost its leader. It's that the leader's legacy is being dismantled by the one person sworn to protect it, Erika Kirk. Charlie bet everything on her. He bet his reputation, his organization, and the future of his family on the idea that Erika Kirk could rise to the occasion. But as we watch the scandals mount, from the assassination tent to these new, heartbreaking whistleblower leaks, we have to ask the hard question: did Erika Kirk ever truly share his vision, or was she just waiting for her turn in the spotlight? Right now, Erika Kirk is standing on the edge of a cliff, The board is meeting, the donors are screaming, and the silence from her camp is deafening. She wanted to be the face of the movement, and now she is, but for all the wrong reasons. I want to know where you stand on this. Do you think Erika Kirk should resign immediately to save the organization? Or do you think she is being unfairly targeted by enemies who want to erase the Kirk name from history? Here is the question of the day. If the board fires Erika Kirk tomorrow, does Turning Point USA survive, or does it die with her? Sound off in the comments below. If you think she needs to go, type resign in the chat. If you think she deserves another chance, type stand with her. We are tracking Erika Kirk's movements hour by hour. As soon as the board makes their final decision on her future, we will be live. Make sure you are subscribed and have that notification bell turned on, because the end of this story is coming and you do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching.